Because you're up, you have control of recording.
So no rush if you're still getting food. Yeah. Great to see some new faces in the room. We love that. But I'm Steph Cowell, Director of Fitness and Recreation. If you've never met me before, I am welcoming back Stacia Whitney. She's been here over a year and a half ago. She was blessed with a lovely new child, new part of her life, and now she's able to come back and join us and give us some more of her excellent content. So I won't take any more time, because I'm sure she has plenty to get through. So have your food, get more if you want it at the end, and I will let you get rolling.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So good to be back, although there aren't that many familiar faces. It's still really good to be back on campus. It's one of my favorite campuses to be on. This topic is so near and dear to my heart, and it's such a big, large picture topic. Normally when I come, I have a little bit more of a honed in specific talk, like digestive health, vitamins and minerals, eating on the go for finals. Dieting and diet culture is so nuanced right now, and it's so large, so multifaceted, and we're not going to cover everything, which is unfortunate. And I'll try to cover really fast and get all of my really passionate feelings out to you. But there's so much more to talk about here. There's so much more to look into and discuss. So it's skimming the surface, really. So what I was able to narrow down, an idea that I wanted to discuss with you, is the idea of eating for wellness, not thinness. Because right now, and for a long time, we're a society that praises and idolizes thinness. And oftentimes with ignoring and discarding wellness, right? If you're thin, wellness doesn't really matter because you're thin. And so that's just so unhealthy. Wellness is the basis for health. So if you're throwing that out and not addressing it, then we're really, really far away from where we should be going. So the dieting dilemma. I was just listening to a book on the way here on 1.5 speed so I could get through a lot of it, because for some reason it ran out at noon today. And I have it in a list, but it's Health at Every Size, which I don't know how I haven't gotten through that book in the last few years, but it's one of the only ones on the list I haven't finished. And it talked about how now you can't say the word diet without everybody thinking weight loss diet. I mean, really, that's not even what the word means, right? The word diet just means what you eat, right? It's just the foods you eat, the pattern that you eat it in. We have made that word to mean weight loss diet, right? There's weight gain diets, but we don't think about it like that. Diet means weight loss. So diet and dieting has been thrown in that more negative side, and that really shouldn't be how it is. When you think dietitian, right, that person must help you lose weight. Really, that's not true. So here we go, let's dive in. So a reintroduction, because it's been so long and I can't even believe it. My name is Stacia. I'm a registered dietitian, and I'm an intuitive eating counselor. I'm passionate about intuitive eating disorder recovery, and identification, as well as postpartum and women's health nutrition, just from my own bias. I'm also really passionate about sustainable agriculture and farm to table. My husband and I have a small hobby farm where we raise organic beef. We have chickens. I have horses, which made it onto the list. My husband did, but my horse made it onto the slide. So I have two wonderful wild kids. They're 4 and 15 months. I love to read. My latest read is Somewhere Beyond the Sea, which is the follow-up to The House on the Cerulean Sea. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. I just ran my first half marathon in 9.5 years. I love to kayak and be outside, and you can see in the corner, we're building a house, which is super exciting. You can only see the garage, but that's okay. Okay, so today's goals, it's really, they're not as concrete as I normally like them to be, but I think overall I'd like to just challenge our normal way of thinking, the normal pattern that we fall into about thinking about nutrition and diet and wellness and thinness. And so we're going to discuss diet culture, the current state of diet culture, that how we see it and view it and its impact on us, maybe some impacts that we don't even realize. We're gonna go over some topics about weight stigma and health bias, and then hopefully we can explore some more intuitive eating, health at every size, components of living not on a diet, not on a weight loss diet, I should say, right? So there's going to be a lot of these questions that we brief over, like, okay, but what am I supposed to eat, right? If I'm not following something, how do I eat? What do I eat? When do I eat? And hopefully we'll be able to go through that. Where do you get your information from? Where should you get your information from? And a more emotional question, can I accept or even love my current body, if I'm not pursuing weight loss? Right, and those are some big idea questions that we'll try to work on today. Before we dive in, dieting and weight loss or weight gain or fatness, thinness, size can be a very emotional, personal topic, and so I just wanted to say that, we're here together, and as a dietitian, I get the comments in line like, oh, I shouldn't be eating this, or, oh, we're having food, but there's a dietitian in the room. God forbid. I gotta tell you, I can't say a single thing about anybody ate. Right? That my position and dietitian's position shouldn't be to judge or make judgment, but should be to share good information and helpful information to help you pursue wellness. Okay, diet culture. What does that even mean? And there really are so many different ways that diet culture has been introduced into our lives and has become a norm. It's like a household name of something, right? Just diet culture. It's what we live in. You can't really avoid it with all the media we consume and our conversations and our social circles. So basically, it's a system that values weight, size, shape over health and wellness, right? When I say we, I think I mean society, right? Diet culture society has paired size and health, and we need to rip that apart, right? They're not synonymous, and well-being and size and weight are not synonymous. Oh, I was supposed to ask you a question. Man, I almost left myself an asterisk. Okay, so we think of diet culture as kind of this abstract idea, but it's a concrete thing, right? The diet industry, the weight loss industry is maybe not something you can hold, but we can monetize it, we can quantify it. And if anybody wasn't looking, I'll ask, how much is the diet industry estimated to be worth in 2024? I showed you the answer. So it's over $19 billion. That's
from the number of books I have on my shelf.
Yeah, exactly. It's shocking, but it's like, okay, yeah, there's so much money grabbing in diet culture, whether it be purchasing some sort of plan or paying somebody for their services or buying books, buying all the things, blenders, shakers, shake mixes. And it's expected to double in the next 10 years. So why are we feeding into this? No pun intended. And it's basically, I love when people laugh at cheesy jokes. It's because we've really been curated to believe this idea of the next diet will work. The diet, we're led to believe we failed the diet, right? Oh, I tried it, but I just wasn't strong enough. I just wasn't hardworking enough. I didn't do it long enough, good enough. I don't want it enough. But one of the most simple but very challenging switches you can make is changing that sentence around and saying, that diet failed me, right? But we never think about it like that, right? Like, I have done so many diets because the diet failed, right? I didn't fail. They're not set up to work, or we wouldn't keep getting 10 new diets every year. Yeah, and these are, just some of them. I have to admit, this is my first more serious plunge back into the nutrition world since having my second baby. So I feel a little bit like I'm just, getting my legs underneath of me. And so I still get all the emails though, like all the new research emails from the academy and things like that. And sometimes they really get you with those titles. And I remember one specifically was dietitian tells people why TikTok influencer who promotes romaine lettuce water is wrong. And you can kind of use that as a Mad Libs because there's been so many like that, right? Like Instagram nutritionist tells you should eat ground up strawberry leaves and you'll be healthy, right? And it just never ended. Pardon?
I said, I got it.
Yeah.
Tomorrow morning.
Yeah. I actually have been told that by someone who I love dearly. Told me, it's funny when you're a dietitian, sometimes you get this you get an interesting response from people. Either it's people being like, oh my gosh, please tell me everything I should eat right now. So people ignoring the fact that you're a dietitian and telling you what the healthiest thing is, which is always, it's just more amusing. But I have had someone tell me that the most nutrient dense food on the planet is strawberry leaves, which it's not, disclaimer, everybody tuning in. But that's just one thing, right? Someone read somewhere and it's passed out. Okay, so the next diet won't work because diets don't work, right? The diets are failing. The dieting system doesn't work. And this is one of the reasons why, and it's a graphic that I think is easy to analyze, and it shows how dieting can be so cyclical, and you really can get trapped in this cycle, right? There's not an end point here. There's not you can exit the map and be on your way, right? If you stay in this loop forever. I know a lot of you will have heard yo-yo dieting, right? And that's this idea that you diet, you bounce back, you diet, you bounce back, you diet, you bounce back, like a yo-yo, right? And this demonstrates a similar idea. So we could start anywhere on a circle, but we'll start with a desire to be thin because that's where a lot of dieting comes from, is the societal pressure to be thin because we associate thin with wellness, thin with health. Right, so then, how do you get to thin? Well, it must be dieting. Okay, well, you're restricting on a diet, right? There's not a diet that doesn't restrict something, or many things, or a lot of things, right? And we know, which we'll talk about hopefully soon, is, if I can ever get rolling, diets don't work. When you restrict, you bounce back. It's like a rubber band. What happens when you pull and pull and pull and pull? It shoots back in the other direction, right? There's a rebound effect that we see. Your body can only restrict and reduce for so long before this implosion of your body saving yourself and saying, I need to eat now and I need to eat a lot because I don't know when you're going to starve me next. Right? Your diet, your body doesn't know, oh, she picked up the Atkins book again. Right? Your body feels, okay, I have now gone an extended period of time without adequate carbohydrates. I might be in a state of famine. I'm not sure. So I'm going to adapt, which leads to cravings and a reduced sense of self-control, right? I mean, we've all been there, right? Even if it's as simple as you forget your lunch at work. Right? What happens when you forget your lunch at work? After work, you eat a lot, right? Your body is hungry and is going to make up for that. Then we have loss of control and overeating. We gain weight, and another bubble in here should be shame, guilt, self-loathing. And then we start the cycle again. Okay, so there is actual measurable damage of dieting. And when I say dieting, I mean weight loss dieting. And I typically mean repetitive dieting or years of dieting, because let's face it, who goes on a diet once, right? You typically start and restart and restart and do your loop over and over and over again. So we've seen, the research shows that by dieting repetitively, our bodies start to develop a protective mechanism where it saves more fat cells, right? It has to do with our hypothalamus and the hormone leptin. It adjusts to say, okay, that was really hard what we just went through. I'm gonna protect myself. So the next time I'm in a famine or in starvation mode, I'll be a little bit more protected. I'm gonna have a little bit more padding, right? And I'll know that my body is safe. It decreases your metabolism because your body's protecting itself. So no, it's not getting enough energy, it's not getting enough carbs, fat, or protein, or all of the above. And it says, okay, I'm going to stop burning as much because I don't know how much I'm going to have to get through the next day, to get through. What if I get sick, right? I'm going to have to slow down so I really have that extra nutrient stores to be able to keep going on my daily activities. And we see these effects are long lasting, most of these, but the top two, it doesn't happen for a 2-week period after you diet or a month period after you diet. There's some really interesting research on The Biggest Loser participants, not just about weight, but they saw a lower or decreased metabolism for up to 6 years after being in that program. So yeah, dieting increases binging and craving, which then we blame ourselves for, because obviously we don't have enough self-control. But really, like I just said before, it's that your body knows it needs food and you're not giving it to your body. So your body is then going to say, all right, I need to increase my appetite. I need to increase my need for food. Your body sees a self-imposed famine, not the next best promised diet. So this is one of the just most profound weight studies that I've come across in the last few years. And it shows an increased risk of cardiac issues and premature death, increased risk in people who yo-yo diet over a population, over a group of people who have an increased BMI. So overweight or obese, which those aren't words I typically use in my practice, but that is what this study is referring to is in BMI. So by dieting, you're increasing your risk for cardiac complications, premature death, even though you're dieting in the name of health, right? And if you had not dieted and fed yourself, and maybe your body would be at a higher BMI, you would have a more protective cardiovascular system. That's amazing. We also see a significant atrophy in biological cues. So when I ask a somewhat rhetorical question, well, how would you feed yourself if you weren't following a diet? Any ideas? Like, how would you know? It's your biological cues. We have those. We're born with those. We're born with hunger and fullness and satiety, right? But we do a really good job of erasing them. And we can blame it on our parents. It's not all our parents' fault. But when you have a baby, right, they scream until they eat, and then they are happy, right? And if they don't want to eat, you're not getting the bottle in their mouth, right? You're not getting the spoon of carrots in their mouth, right? They're like a lockjaw. But every time we shove the spoon in, right, it's us saying, oh, no, you don't listen to your internal regulation. I know better, right? And that comes from, yes, it comes from parents, well-meaning parents, but it also just comes from society in general. The first time you hear a diet that says, okay, well, you should eat at this time, and this time. Oh, okay, well, I was doing it wrong because I was eating an hour later, right? So if I eat at this time, that diet doesn't know when your body gets hungry or full, right? So we just completely ignore the fact that we have inherited internal, strong biological cues to help us know when to eat and when to stop eating. And so many of you, so many people, me too, will say, well, I don't feel that all the time because we've done a really good job of ignoring them, right? We've adapted to erase the hunger, erase the fullness, and we can override it. We can get it back. It's not as easy, right? But we can. And that has a lot to do with the hormone ghrelin and leptin. Leptin comes from the hypothalamus, and there's some interesting research on chronic dieting and the reduction or increase of leptin that can really trigger you to eat more, to move less, to want to move. So you're not doing anything wrong, right? A lot of times we're just ignoring these natural biological cues. So then there's some psychological effects that are just, they just hurt my heart, right? Like they're so preventable, and it's hard to watch someone go through these things, but the idea of, if you're not dieting, it's almost like you're on the outside of a social circle, right? Like everyone's dieting, everyone's doing something with food or exercise, right? And so if you storm into a room, I'll be right behind you though, storm into a room and say, I'm not dieting, right? People would give you the side eye. So we've seen an increase in eating disorder, especially with dieting. And, that first line A is shocking because it has the age of 15. Dieters are 8 times more likely to develop an eating disorder by the age of 18. And some might say, well, how would that happen by the age of 18? It's because most children in elementary school have started to diet, right? That's so scary and so sad, because we're really setting up this prolonged life of complicated feelings and behaviors around food. Dieting is considered a huge risk factor for developing eating disorder. However, we idolize those orthorexic behaviors. Has anybody heard of orthorexia? It's really interesting. I think it's my next slide. But orthorexia is becoming a more accepted term. It's not in the diagnostic list of accepted diet. Like a doctor can't code for orthorexia, and then insurance would be like, oh, okay, that's a code, right? But it's becoming a term that we're seeing in healthcare, and I'll get into it next. But we idolize this orthorexic behavior. You see someone running every morning, eating a protein shake, getting into the gym and doing weight training, eating a salad. You say, wow, they're amazing. Right? But what we don't see is they're not eating, they're barely meeting their calorie needs for a normal day, let alone for all their activities, right? They live in fear of eating dessert. They, are over analytical about calories, food labels, that obsession over those things. So we really kind of have it mixed up about what we're praising, which we'll talk about a little bit more too. Then that feeling of failure, low self-esteem, and anxiety, which we talked about in that dieting loop, those are really powerful emotions to feel and can influence you into doing that cycle over and over again. The other thing that is interesting with diet is that it can really interrupt social life. So if you think about going on like the keto diet or the paleo diet, like yes, restaurants have adapted because of the mass amount of people who want those like catchy terms on the menu, right? Like, oh, this is paleo friendly, this is keto friendly. It is hard to go out with friends and to be on a restrictive diet, right? It's hard to go to a family gathering when you're on intermittent fasting, right? The family meal isn't at the right time, right? It's hard to be on a clean, raw diet and meet up with friends. Well, how do I know how the restaurant is preparing them? Well, this person isn't going to prepare the foods right. So it can be this inhibitor to socializations, and which can lead to other, those feelings of depression, anxiety, stress. And that comes into, struggling with logistics, right? You can miss out on life events just by dieting, and many of us have, right? So have we created a new norm of disordered eating? So disordered eating and eating disorders are slightly different, right? Eating disorders, the umbrella eating disorder is used for those clinical terms, those diagnostic terms, anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, binge eating disorder, and there's a few others, right? Disordered eating is saying like, okay, you don't meet the criteria for anorexia, but you withhold nutrition from yourself a lot, right? You forbid yourself to eat after 7 p.m., even though you had lacrosse practice, right? Like that's not a healthy pattern to be in. This disordered eating isn't able to be diagnosed, but we can talk about these behaviors, these patterns, and that's where orthorexia fits in. So these are some basic characteristics, and I kind of wish I flipped that to just show the bullets, because it sounds like a lot of people, right? It's not this far out category where you're like, oh, wait, I don't have bulimia, right? I definitely don't meet the criteria. A lot of people could slip into this criteria of orthorexia. And it sounds, if you took off orthorexia and said like, how to lose weight, right? It'd just be like a typical healthy person on a weight loss diet, right? Compulsively checking ingredients. Aren't we supposed to do that, right? Looking at food labels, not being able to eat something without seeing the food. If you have allergies, that's different, right? Obviously. Over concern about the health of an ingredient to the point where it causes stress, anxiety, the inability to move forward with a meal, right? Like, okay, now I can't eat this meal. Like it might have this ingredient in it. And I'm not talking about allergies. The inability to eat anything but in narrow groups of food that are deemed healthy or pure. That is like a basic Friday for a dieter, right? Well, this is my list. And if I'm not on this list, I'm not doing well. I'm not healthy. Unusual interest in the health of what others are eating. Spending hours per day thinking about what foods might be served at an event. Showing high levels of distress when safe or healthy foods aren't available. Safe and healthy means like your safe list, right? Like apples, bananas, chicken breast, right? You have this like list that you know is healthy. Obsessively following food and healthy lifestyle media. So many of us do that. I'm guilty of it, right? It's like in my profession, okay, I see this person and then I realize like, wow, the messaging that they're putting off is more negative, right? And that's when you have to unfollow, which we'll talk about. Is anybody surprised by this list? Right? It's kind of like a lot of how a lot of us live. But they said it would make me healthier. So a lot of us fall into this anecdotal diet. And what I mean by that is we're basing our food intake off of other people's experiences. So somebody had a good experience only eating celery water. And so that must be healthy, right? And there's a lot of issues with that. Like who's they? Who's telling you to do that? What research is there? Oftentimes there's not research, and that's one of the big problems. Okay, so here are some basic tips for navigating nutrition in the media that can be life-changing. Ask yourself, who is giving me this information, and are they being paid? I can tell you that if you ever see a registered dietitian, which a registered dietitian is different than a nutritionist, a registered dietitian selling a product, run the other way because they are being unethical and breaking our, dome of ethics. That's not the right word, but that goes against our scope, our code of ethics in our profession. Because that means they just have a huge bias, right? If they're selling you a supplement or a shake or something like that. Are they selling something, right? If they're selling something, they're going to tell you all the good things you want to hear, right? Is there any research? A lot of times there's not. A lot of times it's anecdotal, which means it's based on people's experiences, not research, okay? So more into research, and nutrition has a huge portion of information out there that's based on anecdotes and correlative data. which is hard and can be detrimental. It can be helpful. I tried this, maybe you should try it. When someone bases their whole practice or their whole Instagram page about that, that's when it starts to become hairy. Correlative data can be really helpful, but it's not punitive. It doesn't mean that if you eat an apple a day, it will keep the doctor away, right? It means that people who have a higher intake of fruits are a little bit healthier, right? That's different than a research study with a variable and a constant proving something. Correlative data can show if you do this behavior, you might see an increased incidence in this. But it doesn't say is there's all these other factors going on, right? So, okay, yeah, maybe somebody exercised every day, but maybe that person also worked on a college campus that has a great facility. Maybe they come from a family of athletics, and athletics is just a pillar in their priorities, right? It doesn't take into all those other variables. It cannot rule out the third variable. However, so much research that gets spread out there is a correlative data. This has shown to increase this. This has been correlated with this. And I'd say take it with a grain of salt. Sometimes I have to remind myself of that. Sometimes I see something like, oh, that's awesome. That's such a cool article. I'm like, oh, okay. Right, that's correlative. That's showing that two things might be related. How to proceed with caution. Curate your social media. But easier said than done, right? But if you're going to social media for reassurance or help on a subject and following a lot of people that are making you feel like you're not doing good enough, that's a good sign that you should unfollow those people. Check for credentials.
Think about it.
Would you take your car to Steph to be fixed? Do you have a mechanics degree?
Handy, but not that.
Okay, I should ask that first. Okay, no. Would you go get your appendix removed by a dog groomer? No, right? So why are we taking advice about what we're putting in our body and not putting in our body from people who have no credentials? Just don't believe celebrities. Anyone who tells you to eliminate a this is the big one. Anyone who tells you to eliminate or drastically reduce a macronutrient group, can anybody list the 3 macronutrients?
Protein, carbs.
Protein, fat, yes. Protein, fat, carbs. Right, that's what makes up the energy component. The other energy component would be alcohol, but that's not a required nutrient, right? That just gives us calories. So when I say calorie providing, energy providing macronutrients, it's carbs, fat, protein. So if someone says, well, all you need to do, right, carbs, get all the press about that. Just cut out carbs. Okay, well, let's look at why that's not right. Okay, so I am not here telling you these are the proportions you should be eating. This is a graphic I found that's helpful to my presentation, okay? So typically we eat about half of our diet from carbohydrates. Protein and fat nowadays are pretty much balanced, like 25-25, and that is so person dependent. So I'm not gonna ever stand up here and say, you should eat this, right? Because that just doesn't make sense. That's why if you hear someone saying that on the internet, it doesn't make sense, right? They don't know that your everyday life, like what goes on and what works for you. So in basic, I don't even know, math, if you were to take away carbohydrates, how would you fill up the rest of the circle?
Protein.
Yeah, right? Your fat and protein would go up, would skyrocket. What's the issue with that? Right? Well, we know that a diet really high in protein and a diet really high in fat can have detrimental effects on heart health, kidney health, liver health, blood pressure, glucose control. And you could do that for protein and for fat. We need all 3. If you take one out, that means you're just feeding your body with 2 of the essential macronutrients. right? So just when you're tempted by all those really flashy ads and promotions, think about this very simple circle.
So could I just ask the elephant in the room, because I see people looking at each other?
Yeah.
So what about the whole thing, I mean, is it the whole thing that's being promoted, which is like 1 gram of protein per pound of body fat?
So that is a very generic regulation. That is like taking an RDA or the USDA's recommendation on the average for a population, right? That, if someone's making a health promise on that, that's very faulty. So that, like when I took like basic nutrition 101, this is your first class in dietetics, it was like people need about, and I learned 0.8 grams per kilogram. Okay, and that's like, then you base it off of everything else, right? And then it varies. Are you active? Or do you weight train? Do you have do you have problems with your kidneys? Do you need a lower carbohydrate diet for, are you managing diabetes? Do you need less fat? So maybe you need more protein, right? Maybe, so there's so many maybes there. There's so many it depends in that. That is like a basic recommendation. Like everyone should get 25 to 30 grams of fiber in a day, right? That's not gonna fix or equal a healthy diet. That's just like a very bland, basic recommendation. Anything else? We can come back to this. So that's a good one. That's a good circle. Diet culture, so we can say all these things are true, they all make sense, they're all resonated, we're all feeling fired up. Well, why does diet culture perpetuate, right? It's because it thrives on this idea, on convincing us and reminding us and showing us that we don't have trust in ourselves to feed ourselves properly, right? If you told someone who was yo-yo dieting, okay, just stop dieting. The response to me is always, I don't even know how I would eat. And I don't even know what I would eat or when I would eat, because they've been shown, right, that if you're not on a diet, you have no self-control, you eat all the time, you don't know when to eat. This diet will give you a schedule. Well, what's the problem with that? It completely negates our natural biological cues, right? A blanket diet cannot service a population, a community of hugely diverse people. So the hard part is we need to go back to trusting ourselves, right? We need to regain that trust, grow that trust back, which is harder than losing it, right? It's more futile, it's challenging, it's emotional, we have to really dive introspectively. I'll pause there and say, nutrition isn't just nutrition, right? Like you think, okay, I'm just eating too many grams of something. But it has so much more of an emotional, mental health, social component to it, which I have a good slide coming up to show how I like to think about it. But we like to ignore that. It can't be my emotions. It can't be how I was shown or perceived health to be as a child, right? It has to just be that there's something wrong with me right now. I'm just not doing it good enough. Okay, so now we'll move on to our hyperfixation on thin instead of healthy. My most profound thing are the next two slides. Thin is not equivalent to health, right? You can be thin and have high blood pressure. You can be thin and be ill. You can be thin and be weak. You can be thin and not know how to feed yourself. And that's hard. That can be one of those things that are hard to accept. This is easier for society to accept than this, right? Having fat or being large, however you want to frame that, does not mean you're unhealthy, right? That's a size, and yes, here it is. We're starting to see that the declaration of fat, overweight, obese, those terms that the medical society likes to use it's hyperfixated on what actually happens, which this slide is important, but research is showing that about 50% of people with a BMI over 30, which if you were to follow a BMI chart would be obese, are healthy. And healthy should be in quotes because we're kind of talking about what does healthy even mean, right? So they have no comorbidities, right? They have no chronic illnesses. They have no issues. Their body is just larger. And 50%. So to me, that's saying, wow, only half of people in larger bodies have some sort of unhealthy comorbidity, but our entire healthcare system and how we view health is based on the fact that, no, you have to be thin to be healthy, right? It ignores that other 50%. Okay, so BMI, is anybody familiar with it? Has anybody looked into like kind of the downside of BMI or why it's really been, okay. So I won't drum it too much because I think we are starting to see a lot more about this. It started in the 1800s, so right there probably shows you it could take a little update. But it was really more solidified in not that long ago, in 1972. However, the original research study, which people are now starting to talk about, was on a population of adult men, mostly Caucasian, adult, healthy men. Okay, and so I don't feel like I need to go into why that is absolutely ridiculous, why we use it for everyone, from, infancy till, the end of your life. It's so outdated. It doesn't include race, sex, economical issues, social situations. It overgeneralizes health. To say that height by weight indicates, predicts your life's health or wellness is a huge assumption. And that BMI could honestly be a talk on. This is my favorite picture. BMI could really be, a topic amongst itself. So I'm all for cheesy nutrition puns and cartoon vegetables. I don't know why the meditating mushroom at the bottom just gets me every time. I just get so happy when I can show it. I think that's like my most positive response. Normally people are like, so good. Okay, so when we think of, I wanted to create another pie chart, but I ran out of time. What we think of if someone were to say, make a pie chart that means health, right? This half would be weight and this half would be food you eat, right? Like to us, that's like, are you healthy or are you not healthy, right? Your size and what you eat. This is Hetler's 6 Dimensions of Wellness, which I absolutely love. Can anybody see weight on there? Right, it's not. Can anybody see nutrition? No, right? This is so thought-provoking to me, right? Nutrition and weight would probably be umbrellaed under physical health, but it's not even a component on the chart, right? Because if you don't have good social health, right, you have relationships, some sort of social outlet, people, like-minded people, support system, right? Your wellness declines. If you have a dangerous or a job where you're not treated well or something like that, your occupational health would suffer. Emotional health should be like 50% of the pie chart in my personal opinion. But if your emotional health is struggling, you're not well, right? Spiritual health, right? We don't talk about that a lot. That can be really fulfilling. Intellectual health, are we stimulated? Right? Like sitting on a couch and watching The Masked Singer, right? That's not stimulating, right? We would feel unwell if that's all that we took in intellectually. And then physical, right? One piece of the pie, one small piece of the huge pie. Yet we put so much emphasis and importance and self-worth on that physical component. So I hope you liked those vegetables. Okay, phases of change. Could be in itself an hour talk. or more. We have this perception that our bodies should be the same at every phase in our life. And we don't have enough a system working against that to help kind of tear down that enigma. But our bodies aren't the same at 18 as they are at 38, as they are at 68, right? That doesn't make sense. You're a different person. You're grown, you've worked, you've had kids, you've had loss, you've changed jobs, you've moved, right? There's just so many factors in that to then assume your body is going to be the same exact weight. Your body, your brain isn't even done developing until 25. So your body is not fully developed at 18. Yet the portion, the percentage of the population who thinks, well, I don't weigh what I did in high school. Well, you are a child, right? And you are not considered an adult. So let's not strive to be our childhood weight, right? That is a good place to start. We accept these phases of change, but we don't accept the changes that they do to our size. And how can we embrace change and pursue health without hating our bodies? That's a really kind of open-ended question, but a place to start. I apologize that this is like, can I do something about that? To like, it just kind of cuts off that side. Should have asked 30 minutes ago, but that's okay. I'll fill in the blank. The one letter. So these coined terms, body positivity and body positivity and body neutrality, are thrown out there. And it can be hard to kind of lasso and tag down what they actually mean. But in general, body positivity means you just love everything about yourself, which is great. Like, you just celebrate your body, you love it, you don't want to change it. You're very positive about your body. And that's a great idea to work towards, but it's not super practical. Body positivity, we should all have periods where we pursue body positivity. But the idea that you could be body positive every single day, all day, is just not realistic, right? Like, that would be, if you buy a really cool car, there's going to be times where you're not happy about a feature in the car, right? And you don't spend the whole time with your car hating your car, right? You could say that about a friend, right? Or a significant other, right? Like, you can appreciate so much about them, and there could be some characteristic, some flaw, right? And we accept that in other people, right? But it's hard to accept in ourselves. So body neutrality is this middle of the road approach between positivity and negativity, holy moly, where you're not feeling like you have to love every single thing about your body, but you're not fixating on the flaws, right? It's more acceptance. It's very meditative, like that, kind of yoga journey. Like, this is how I am, this is who I am in the now space. This little graphic kind of shows the difference. If body positive is like, I love my legs because they're super strong and they helped me run a half marathon, right? That's body neutrality. It's not about the size, it's about the function, right? My legs are strong, that's awesome. Body positivity would be like, I'm just gonna use the example. I love my legs, cellulite and all. Right? Well, we're not all going to love that every day. But those are some terms that are becoming more prevalent, and I hope they become more prevalent. Okay. I'm going to get too heated up about that diet stuff. I just, can't leave it. Okay, how do we stop dieting? And this will be what I leave you with, because I unfortunately ran out of time. But sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's easy to say I'm not on a diet, right? Oh, I'm not on a diet. But really, if you look more introspectively, you have a lot of food rules. And your food rules kind of create this personal restrictive diet, right? So you don't have to be on Atkins, you don't have to be on South Beach, you don't have to be on paleo to be dieting, maybe even subconsciously. So there's some introspective things that you can do. like really sitting down and looking in and saying, am I actually on a diet? Do I have food rules? Where do they come from? What feelings about food come up when I start to think about food rules or breaking them? What fears about food or weight or health do you hold on to? Right? And that's kind of where you can start. I apologize again for briefing towards this, but I would challenge you or encourage you, however you like to be motivated, to look into intuitive eating and the health at every size approach. It really takes the emphasis off of dieting and looks more at those biological cues that I talked about, hunger and fullness, right? Because if we're not honoring hunger and fullness, we're listening to external cues about when to eat, and external cues about when to eat and when not to eat just can't be accurate, right? It's someone else telling you to do something. Your body is gonna know better. And I am gonna breeze through this, and I'm sorry. Well, will this be like emailed?
Yes.
Out if you want more of those notes, because I want to leave you and highlight some of the books and resources that I have on this.
We can send this presentation.
Okay, great. This is an awesome list of books that are anti-diet, health at every size. These are books that I enjoy. I am not professionally telling you that I agree 100% with every single word in every single book, but these are books that I think are helpful. These are books that I think are healing. These are books that I think are inclusive, that are progressive, and that really emphasize that thin doesn't equal health and that fat doesn't equal not healthy. The intuitive eating, 4th edition, goes through those 10 steps of intuitive eating, and there's a workbook that's really wonderful, and it could kind of serve as like a journal or guide to dismantling your that diet center within you. I'm listening to Health at Every Size, and it's been really wonderful. And she has another book out too. Fat Talk is a really interesting read for parents. It talks a lot about the generational ideas on food and thinness and dieting, and that's really powerful. At the top is the link to this article about like the downfalls and inconsistencies with BMI, the history, and then just like the problems that it's leading to. So I linked you to, it's a government website that has that article. Okay, and then we talked about curating social media and how do we do that, right? No one wants to go on Instagram and not have any cool content to look at. So get rid of all the negative, harmful content that's making you feel like you need to change your body size or that's just giving a negative image. Here are some ones that I love. Podcasts, Food Psych, and Body Kindness are really great. Let Us Eat Cake is very entertaining. They're both RDs, they're both science-based, but it's like a much more satirical and funny. And then those social media accounts. I do think Instagram makes it clear. You can kind of look and see like, oh, okay, is the messaging what I want to see? Scrolling back, are they advertising something? Are they selling something? Are they showing weight loss images? And things like that. So that is what I will leave you at. I think these 2 pages are a really good like pocket guide to where to start if you want to start challenging your brain on how to get out of that dieting enigma. Thank you. Thank you for coming. It was really fun to share all of this. And I'm here. You can ask questions now. If you have to skedaddle, that's totally fine. But I'm all yours.
Yeah, maybe do some, and just like flip these pages that have like
Yes,
all the
that sounds
sources,
great.
that would be really good. Perfect.
Yes. Perfect.
Obviously, I have to be close to the corner.
Yeah.
No.
Great.
Let's do this.